Guys, partial fraction decomposition here. We have this rational function here that we're trying to split into different fractions, okay? Just to make it easy to work with. So we have 6 minus 4x divided by x to the power 3 minus 6x to the second plus 11x minus 6. So the first thing we always do is to go into the denominator and see how we can break it down, how we can factor it. That's all about it. So we go there and then see. So now can we factor that? As we look at it right now, it's more difficult to think through just like that. So the next thing you do is to see if there is any other way that we can break it down. So one way is to try to figure out the zero of it, the solution of it, okay, of this polynomial expression at the bottom. So that means we can use the trials and errors also, meaning that we can go for small numbers that we can substitute in here to see if that will give us 0. Okay, so that's what we call a zero of a polynomial. So now let's go with 1. So if we take 1, for example, so 1 power 3 is 1 minus 6 times 1 to the second power is 1. So 6 times 1 is 1. So plus, so 1 times 11, that will give us 11 minus 6. What would that give us? So this is 1 plus 11 is 12. Negative 6 is negative 12. So negative 12 and positive 12 will give us a 0. So that means 1 is a 0 of this polynomial. But how does we translate that? Because that we can write it down then as a factor, which is x minus 1. Okay? So now we have to keep going because we're still trying to break down the denominator. So to do that, we're going to use long division. Okay? So long division means what? So we're going to take x to the third minus 6x to the second plus 11x minus 6. And then we're going to divide that by x minus 1. Remember, we just found out that 1 is a 0. So if 1 is a 0, so that means we can use the factor x minus 1. We always use the opposite sign of it to make it as a factor, which is x minus 1. Okay? So now, how do we go about this now? So to make long division, always think about this, ladies and gentlemen. You go with x squared, the first term here, divided by the first term here. Okay? So x to the third power divided by x will going to give us what? X to the second power. So that will be our first answer there. So x squared times x is x to the third. X squared times negative 1 is negative x squared. Now we can subtract. Now we can make, separate here. So we end up with negative here and positive here. Okay? So this one is 0. And negative 6 plus 5 plus 1 is going to give us negative 5x squared. Then we can bring down 11x and then minus 6. Okay? So then the next thing to do is take the first term again, divided by the first term here. So negative 5x squared divided by x is going to give us negative 5x. So it's going to give us negative 5x. So negative 5x times x is negative 5x squared. Negative 5x times negative 1 is plus 5x. And then you subtract. So this one becomes a positive. This one is a negative. Are we good? All right. So now this is a 0 because negative and positive, 0 of the same thing. And then 11 minus 5 is going to give us what? 6x, right? So 6x minus 6. So again, first term here divided by the first term there. 6x divided by x is going to give us what? 6. So plus 6. So 6 times x is 6x. 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. And then again, we minus it. Negative and positive. This is 0. This is 0. So we're good now with the long division. We finished with the long division. So now because we finished the long division, now we still have to break down the x squared minus 5x plus 6. We cannot leave it like that. So now can we factor it? Is there any two number, because this is a trinomial, because that's a trinomial, we can use the AC method that you guys can get back into our previous videos of factoring. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply gives you 6. And then the same two numbers add up gives you negative 5. So that will give us what? That will give us negative 2 and negative 3. Because it's negative 2 and negative 3, so we end up with x negative 2 and x negative 3. Because again, negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. Negative 2 plus negative 3 is negative 5. Bingo. You're done with that. So that means that we end up with 3 factors after breaking down the denominator. Okay? So now let's rewrite our equation now, our rational expression, and then see what we can do with it. So here we are. Let's separate this. So we end up with, so let me just bring it down here so we can have enough space. So we have 6 minus 4x over x3 minus 6x squared plus 11x minus 6. And then that is equal to, so we have a over x minus 1 plus b over x minus 2 plus c over x minus 3. Those are the three factors that we get after factoring this one, okay? Because remember, x minus 1, x minus 2, x minus 3. And that's how we put it down. That's the reason why we have A, B, and C, okay? We have power 3 as the order here. So now, how can we move forward? We're going to take now the factored expression and multiply by each of the fractions. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is where many people make mistakes. We multiply by this one here, multiply by this one here, the second, and then the third. Okay? So that pretty much means you're doing this, x minus 1, x minus 2, x minus 3. That's what you're doing. Same thing you're doing for the second, for the third, and then for the fourth one there. Now we don't have a lot of, enough space here. Let me put this one here. Okay? Minus 3. And then you're doing the same thing here. All right? So you're multiplying this one also by that. So that is x minus 1, x minus 2, then x minus 3. Okay? Sorry for this one here. Okay? And then for the last one here, times x minus 1, x minus 2, x minus 3. Are we good? Okay. So once we come back here, what's going to happen for the first fraction here? This is just the same thing as that. So that means what? You end up with 6 minus 4x only. And this is equal to, so once you come here, x minus 1 cross out. What you have left, a times x minus 2 times x minus 3. Okay? Once you go to the second one here, x minus 2 crossed out. So you end up with plus b times x minus 1, x minus 3. Last but not least, this one will be c. And then also x minus 3 out. You end up with x minus 1, x minus 2. Okay? So this is what we have so far. So we're looking for A, B, and C. How do we go about that? So now we're going to choose x values. Values for x. And then substitute in the whole equation. Now we have to be smart about it, meaning that we don't want to do too much work that we don't need. So that means we got to find values here that when you plug it into x, that will give you 0 to be able to eliminate, to be able to cancel any of these or two at the same time. So if you take a equals to 1. So if x equals to 1, what's going to happen? So that means here's going to be 0, here's going to be 0. Okay, so let's go at it. So you end up with 6 minus 4 times 1 equals to a times. So 1 minus 2 is negative 1. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. And then plus, so what's happening here? This one's 1 minus 1 is 0. And then 1 minus 3, which is negative 2. Plus c times 1 minus 1, which is 0. And then 1 minus 2, which is negative 1. So this is 0, that is 0. So you end up with what? 4 times 1 is 4. 6 minus 4 is 2. So you have 2 here equals to negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. So you end up with 2a. All right? And then this is 0, that is 0. So that means what? That means a is equal to 1 afterwards. Okay? So now you got a, you can look for b and c. So what's happening here? So now you can just say I have x equals to 2. And then you do the same thing. And don't forget about the fact that a equals to 1 already. So you go, so you have 6 minus 4 times 2. Okay? Equals to a, which is 1 already. And then it's 2 minus 2 is what? 0. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. Plus b times 2 minus 1 is 1. 2 minus negative 3 is negative 1. Okay? And then when you come to this one here, this is c times 2 minus 1 is 1, and then 2 minus 2, which is 0. So this is 0, this is 0. So you end up with what? And then 4 times 2 is negative 8, and negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2. So this is equal to, so and then 1 times negative 1 is negative 1 times b is negative b. And then you end up with b equals to positive 2. Okay, because this also is 0, that also is 0. Now, last but not least, so we can also choose x equals to 3. It just happens that in this case, x equals to 1, x equals to 2, x equals to 3. In many other cases, it could be 1, negative 1. You know, depends on the problem that you have, but most of the time, it's very small numbers, most of the time. So now you end up with 6 minus 4 times 3 equals 2. And then we know a, which is 1, times, so that is 3 minus 2, which is 1. And then here you have 3 minus 2, which is 0. And then you have b here. So this one is giving you b. So b is what? So x minus 1 is what? So x is equal to 3. So it's 3 minus 1, which is 2. And then 3 minus 2, which is 0. And then plus c is, so you have 3 minus 1, which is 2. And then 3 minus 2, which is 1. Okay? So then what's going to happen? This one is again 0. This one again is 0. And 2 times 1 is 2. So you have 2c. So you end up with 4 times 3, which is what? 4 times 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 plus 6 is negative 6. And that is equal to what? So this is 0. This is 0. And then you end up with 2c, correct? So that means c is giving you what? C is equal to negative 3. All right? So you have A, 1, B, 2, C equals to negative 3. So that means at the end, once you get that, you just substitute them in here, and then you get your final answer. Okay? So that means you have A, which is 1 over, so x minus 1, and then plus 2 over, you have x minus 2, and then you have negative 3 over x minus 3. Okay? So that's what you're looking for.